Hello, my name is Patrick Ewing, and I'm the head basketball coach at Georgetown University. Thank you, Clio Sports, for the opportunity to present the Clio Sports Lifetime Achievement Award to a true legend and a great friend. I've known David for over 30 years, and he has done an outstanding job for both me and numerous other clients, both on and off the court. David's tenacity, work ethic, and vision is why he is the best at what he does. On behalf of Clio Sports Award and all its fans worldwide, I want to present the 2021 Lifetime Achievement Award to you, David, and congratulations.
David Falk taught me the evolution of business, how to utilize my likeness, my personality, my basketball talent, and channel that into the business aspect of Michael Jordan as a person.
Everyone who's been represented by David turns out winning. He really takes good care of his people, and we've become great friends. And my life has gotten a lot better as a result of my association with David.
I think the only person I've ever met who's more competitive than David Falk is Michael Jordan. I think what's made him successful is his tenacity. He never stops.
The more I was around him, even though I couldn't get in a word because he talked so damn much, I knew that I liked this guy. I really liked him, and I thought he really worked hard at what he did, and that was very important to me.
If David Falk had been my agent, I'd probably be the happiest man in the world today, because he knew how to strike a deal with other owners.
David Falk's reputation, I think his reputation towards the players, from the players was great. The management side, they thought it was cutthroat. He's hard-nosed, hard negotiator. So he was always in the corner for the players.
The business relationship that would come to define David Falk began in 1984, when he became Michael Jordan's agent.
He saw something that no one's ever been able to do, and he basically, with a blank sheet of paper, created his own perception of what he felt like he can, develop in terms of an athlete who had great personality, who come from a great family background, who had great potential from a basketball sense, and a bunch of companies looking for that type of marriage. And he carved out that that whole persona, that whole Michael Jordan perception with corporations that everybody to this day has been trying to emulate.
I told the companies, sort of like the famous John Kennedy line, ask not what America could do for you, but what you could do for America. I said, I know what Michael could do for your company. I want to know what are you prepared to do if we sign with you for Michael.
There is a category as people who get inducted as contributors, people who have contributed to the NBA, and even though David, probably in the minds of a lot of the people who are on the committees who vote for it, will be looked at as an adversary, because of his nature of being an agent and representing players, and also fighting the collective bargaining agreement and trying to make it, a lot better for the players than it is for the owners. But the fact that he has spent 35 years as an agent in the NBA, and has dealt with every single team, and has dealt with the front office and the league office on a regular basis, his contributions probably somewhere can be or should be recognized as a major contributor. And I could see that as a possibility down the road.
Growing up in a very modest background, I pinch myself from time to time how blessed I've been, to do what I love to do. I'm one of the few people that I know that got a chance right after law school to walk right into the job that was my dream job, and to work for the best and the brightest for 40 years. I'm grateful to the players that made me who I am, stuck by me. I'm grateful to people like John Thompson, for being a special friend and a mentor. I'm grateful for the people I work with that make it fun to come into work every day. I'm incredibly grateful. Hello, I'm David Falk, and I'm truly honored to receive the Clio Lifetime Sports Achievement Award. I literally have spent my entire professional career managing the careers of hundreds of professional athletes. It never occurred to me when I was in law school back in the 70s that I'd be doing advertising at all. And the fact that I'm being recognized today is truly humbling. I've had the opportunity to work with some of the greatest athletes in the history of sports, people like Michael Jordan, Patrick Ewing, John Thompson, Mike Krzyzewski, Dominique Wilkins, John Stockton, James Lofton, Wilbur Sison, and many, many others. And one of the most fun aspects of my career has been off the court and off the field, working with some of the most significant American consumer products companies, ranging from Nike, Coca-Cola, McDonald's, Morgan Stanley, many, many others, to create some of the most fun and long-term commercials that have become part of our sports culture, part of our general culture, really. When you think of commercials like Nothing But Net, I Want to Be Like Mike, Must Be the Shoes. These have become part of our daily lifestyle in sports. And so to receive this award is a tremendous honor for me. I'm very grateful to the people at the Clio Foundation for giving me this award, and I promise you it will have a very prominent place in my trophy case.
Hi everyone, Tim Nudd here, Editor-in-Chief of the Clio Awards. And today I have the great pleasure of talking with one of the premier behind-the-scenes playmakers in all of sports over the past half century. David Falk, pioneering sports agent, most notably to Michael Jordan through much of his career, but also to hundreds of others. A gifted and innovative contract negotiator, and also, of course, a brilliant creative marketer who changed the endorsement and the product marketing game in sports in a fundamental way, greatly benefiting his clients and also in the process, changing pop culture forever. All of which we'll talk about today. So David, thank you for being here and congratulations on the 2021 Clio Sports Lifetime Achievement Award.
Delighted to be with you, and I'm truly honored to receive the award.
So David, one of your great innovations early on was to give athletes in team sports the same branding opportunities that athletes in solo sports like tennis enjoyed. So this approach, essentially predicted the future where today players in many ways transcend the teams they play for. Why do you think you were so far ahead of the curve on that?
Well, when I started working in this business, I was still in law school in 1974. And the law firm that I worked for grew into the second largest sports agency in the world called ProServ. And they represented people like Arthur Ashe, Stan Smith, Jimmy Connors, Lendl. And so while my first love was always basketball and football, I had to learn the tennis business. And I was the junior agent for both Arthur Ashe and Stan Smith. I didn't negotiate their deals. I monitored their royalty payments. I managed their schedules. And so as my career evolved, and I started working with some great basketball players. We had Marcus Johnson from UCLA, was the National Player of the Year in 1977. Phil Ford from North Carolina was the National Player of the Year in 1978. And James Worthy was the #1 pick of the draft in 1982. My understanding of the business evolved, and around me, the shoe business really started to grow. I mean, if I take you back to 1976, we represented 3 of the first 5 picks in the draft: John Lucas, Wally Walker, and Adrian Dantley. Their shoe deals were about $2,000 a year, and a few pairs of free shoes. By the time James Worthy came around in 1982, I made James the highest paid endorser in all the NBA before he ever played a game, on the same team with Magic Johnson and Kareem. So it was a natural evolution to me. And then when Michael came along, the really major variable for him was the Olympics. He started the Olympics in LA in 1984, in front of a worldwide stage, maybe as many as 1 billion viewers. And for the first time in his career, he really showcased the kinds of skills that he would showcase in the NBA that were sort of kept under wraps in the very tight team concept that Coach Smith had at Carolina. And so I felt he went to a poor team, hadn't won a lot of games, had been down for a number of years in Chicago. I really felt he did transcend the team before he even was on the team. And so to me, it felt like a natural evolution in the growth of my own career to demand that he be treated just like a tennis player or a golfer. And the irony was that most of the major shoe companies in America thought that was heresy, that you have to, the prevailing wisdom at the time was you have to come into the league, establish yourself for 4 or 5 years before you can try to enjoy any types of off-the-court activities. And so none of the superstars at Michael's era, Larry Bird, Magic Johnson, Kareem, none of them had their own shoes. Whereas in tennis, you get a very young player coming to the league, coming into professional tennis, and right away, people give them a shoe, they give them a lot of clothes, their own rackets. That's the way it is in the NBA today. If you think how ironic it is that at Brand Jordan, Michael's own company, he has people like Zion Williamson coming out of Duke a couple of years ago, giving him his own shoe. He has Chris Paul with his own shoe, Carmelo with his own shoe. That was unheard of in 1984. And so for me, being a little bit of a contrarian, I guess, the more people told me that it wouldn't work, the more convinced I was that we had to do it. And the rest is history.
Indeed, yeah. Take us back to 1984 when you became Michael's agent. Did you know from the very beginning how special he would be as an endorser, as a businessman, and of course, eventually as a global brand himself?
No, I think anyone that would say today, I don't think Michael would say, I don't think his parents, James and Dolores, would say, I don't think even Coach Smith, who's not with us anymore, would say. Everyone thought he would be exciting, and they thought it'd be good, but no one had a clue to how transcendent he would be. And I think that's a tribute to his intelligence, his drive, and the background he had both in his family and at North Carolina. I've said many times in interviews that if you could reverse engineer all the qualities that made Michael special, it would never work unless you had a lightning bolt ignite the mixture. And I think his family was special. They pushed him to always improve himself. No matter what he achieved, they always thought he could do better. And at Carolina, while he was a tremendous, competitor, he played with James Worthy, who was the #1 pick. He played with Brad Daugherty, who was the #1 pick. And Coach Smith forced him to not rely on his physical skills, to rely on his mind, become a great player that he became. So he had everything in the world a lot properly aligned. The stars truly aligned in his career.
David, you're famous as a brilliant negotiator, obviously the Worthy, James Worthy, and many, many others later. You're also a powerhouse creative marketer. I know you came up with the name Air Jordan. You had the idea for Space Jam. Do you think of yourself as a creative person first, a businessman first, or is it sort of all one and the same to you?
It's interesting because I'm a lawyer by training. Never took a course of marketing in my life. And I have a program at George Washington Law School called the Falk Academy of Management and Entrepreneurship. And together with my partner, Danielle Cantor, we teach a weekly course in negotiations. And the thing I stress the most in teaching the course is creativity. And I do consider myself a creative person. Some people might consider me a little bit of a cornball. Michael likes to tease me that Air Jordan was my first great idea and my last great idea. I think he says that to try to motivate me, but I think creativity is what it requires for a lawyer who is a great trial lawyer, making a pitch to the jury, to connect to the jury, and to try to find a way to persuade them that his case is the right case. I think in marketing, when you're marketing athletes, I think your job is to be an entrepreneur and to think, like, where's the world going 5 years from now? Not where was it 10 years ago, because then you're just replicating the past. And to me, that's boring. So I do consider myself creative, and it's a great challenge to me. I've been extremely privileged to represent what David Halberstam would call the best and the brightest. I've had 55 players in the NBA alone drafted in the top 10 picks, 8 players drafted #1. I've had countless players and coaches in the Hall of Fame that have trusted their careers in me. And that creates a tremendous responsibility to try to perform at a level commensurate with the level of the players that you're representing, who are absolutely the best in the world. And so you constantly have to try to improve and get better at what you do, or you're not going to be able to, continue in a relationship of trust and confidence that these individuals are placing in you.
Yeah, this may be a case of choosing between your children, but do you have a favorite ad campaign that Michael did?
Yeah, it's funny. I think there's so many great ones. There really are. I mean, Be Like Mike is one of my particular favorites because Gatorade came to us and asked if we could approach the Disney Corporation and get the rights to a song from Jungle Book called Be Like Him. And ironically, right around the same time, Disney had called me cold to try to get Michael to create a child's educational product that was sort of like a picture book and a soundtrack accompanying it to help kids learn how to read. And we were miles and miles apart on the price. They thought they could get it for a small amount. And so when Gatorade called, then we went back to Disney. I think they asked us for $500,000 for the rights to the song Be Like Him from the Jungle Book. And Gatorade was incensed, and they hired a local group in Chicago, like a street group. And for $10,000, they created Be Like Mike, which was probably way better for the commercial than Be Like Him. And and I have a lot of friends named Mike. I have clients named Mike, like Mike Bibby. And I always tease him and say, come on, I want you to be like Mike. That's not how he would do it. So that's one of my particular favorites. Like when we first started at Nike, with Jordan, I had a very close friend who ran all the marketing. We were both the same. We were both lawyers who would never take the cost of marketing, but we were pretty creative guys. So we make the deal. And the NBA, they come out with the first shoe, the ugly black and red one, and the NBA banned the shoe. So he calls me in a freaking panic and he says, God, we're fucked. He goes, NBA banned the shoe. I said, God, that's the best thing I've ever heard. He goes, why? So we're going to do a Banned in Boston commercial. Like this is going to blow up the shoe. And we did it. The very first commercial, it's like they pan Michael head to toe. It goes like, on October 15th, Nike introduced a revolutionary basketball shoe. And on October 22nd, the NBA banned it. Then they had like the dragnet thing with the chisel into the stone. Said, fortunately, the NBA can't stop you from wearing the shoe. We would sit in Portland over sushi and beer, and we did all the commercials ourselves, like cornball stuff, like Flight 23, clear for takeoff. He's on the basketball court. The smoke coming out of it. It was really corny. Long before White and Kennedy came along, or Chiat Day, and it was fun. It really was fun. Those people are great at what they do, but it's really fun. It's really fun to be able to create your own stuff.
It's a great story. Wanted to ask you about the Last Dance documentary. Obviously, it was such a cultural moment at the beginning of the pandemic. Everybody was watching it. Must have been remarkable for you seeing Michael's story and your own story captured so fully and so reverently like that.
Yeah, we started the project literally 30 years ago. It was David Stern's brainchild. Mm-hmm. And for many years, Michael resisted the idea of producing it. He's actually a very humble person. Not humble on the court, but off the court, he's a very humble, sort of laid back kind of a guy. And I think he just wanted to tell the story in his own voice, in his own words. He's now 58 years old. And what I think it did for the public is it showed why Michael was the greatest player ever. It wasn't simply that he was the best jumper or the best jump shooter or the best dunker. It's because he had the ability to raise his game to the ultimate level when he needed it the most. His ability to drive himself and to drive others around him. And what I found interesting is that when Michael revealed himself in that way, he did the same thing in his Hall of Fame acceptance speech. And people were resentful about it. And they didn't understand that when he came back to basketball, he was almost 30 years old. He'd been away from the game for 2 years. He changed his body to play Major League Baseball. And he knew the clock was ticking. He only had so many years left to win. And that drove him to be as strong on himself as he was of the players around him. But very few of the players had the toughness to live under that kind of an environment. Some of them resented it, but at the end of the day, they won 2 3-peats. So I guess his methods work.
For sure. There are so many off the court opportunities for athletes nowadays: corporate marketing, venture capital, digital opportunities. How do you see the role of the modern sports agent today in helping athletes navigate all that stuff?
That's a great question because, my partner and I talk about this all the time over the last 5 years. In the major team sports, certainly in football and basketball, the rules in collective bargaining have dramatically limited the role of an agent. If you think about this, in 1985 and in 1990, I negotiated the highest contract in the history of the NBA for Patrick Ewing and Danny Ferry, who had never played a game. Patrick's contract was 55% higher than Kareem's, the highest contract ever. Today, when you have a Zion Williamson or a great player going #1, my daughter would get the same contract that I would get. There's a wage scale. If you're a great player like LeBron or Kobe or Kevin Durant or Giannis, there's a max. You can only get, and if it takes you more than 1 minute, if you're LeBron's agent, to go in and say, okay, I want the max for 1 year, I want the max for 2 years, or the same thing for anyone, for Giannis or Kawhi Leonard. And so 70% of all the contracts aren't negotiated anymore. They're just standard deals. And I think it's dramatically reduced the role of an agent. I think that players who are forward-looking in the NBA are going to not hire agents over the next 4 or 5 years. They're going to hire business managers because their place in the draft is pretty mechanical. But what they really need is someone who can combine a lot of the elements you just talked about: digital marketing, venture capital, movies, social media. And I think you can have smaller agents. I think the role of these big agencies is going to wane. They don't have enough time to spend with individual clients. And I think people are going to do sort of what Rich Kleiman is doing with Kevin Durant, be like a one-person shop. That's where I think the business is going to go. That's where I think it needs to go.
Interesting. Okay. I'm curious to also get your take on NCAA athletes, finally being able to make endorsement money. Do you see that as a positive, and are there pitfalls to that?
I have very strong feelings on this subject. I talk about it often. I think that the old system was extremely unfair to athletes. The NCAA was making billions of dollars, and it's like making a movie, and you're not going to give the actors any money for being in the movie. I think what they did to fix it is going to legalize cheating on a grand scale. I understand the NCAA is investigating Memphis right now, because Federal Express gave huge amounts of money in NILs to 3 incoming recruits. And so I don't know what the perfect answer is. I think athletes definitely need to be compensated. The problem is, as I like to quote my dear and late friend John Thompson, he used to say, I don't run a democracy. I treat everybody fairly, but I don't treat everybody the same. And so if I could go back over 30, 40 years, if you said, hypothetically, every college could pay $1 million to its basketball players. There's 13 players on scholarship. If you're at Georgetown in 1982, you give all the money to Patrick Ewing, and you say to the rest of the players, we're going to give you a scholarship worth $100,000 a year, maybe more, for the next 4 years to play with one of the great players in the history of the game. If you're at Georgetown in 93, you say you could play with Allen Iverson, I give him all the money. If you're at Duke with Zion, you give all the money to Zion. Even though there's some great players around him, those are transcendent players. Had LeBron gone to college or Kobe, you'd say the same thing. I think that most of the players on a basketball team will find out that when college basketball ends, they can't get a job making as much money as the value of the scholarship. And the problem is that the people around them don't emphasize enough to the players how valuable the scholarship really is, and that they should spend more time learning some type of a skill in college to translate their college experience and their competitiveness into a job when school is over. So I think it's really sort of like a huge gulf between the players that really have significant value and the rest of the players. And I thought that a better way for the NCAA to handle the NIL would have been to create some kind of a trust fund where every player that plays gets a certain share, because the players that really have the ability to sell their name have to be really careful that you don't give your name away in college for 50 or 100,000, and then you turn pro and you've diluted yourself in the marketplace, maybe worth $1 million. That was my fear with Michael all the time, that we had to really take our time and make the right deals. We had as many as we did. We could have done 10 times as many. I had to be the brand manager and keep it really select. And so I think that college athletes definitely deserve to capitalize on their name, but I'm not sure the methodology that we put in place in round one is the right methodology.
Okay. Circling back to advertising for a moment, do you have any favorite sports commercials or campaigns that are happening now that you're particularly fond of?
I really have, so much has gone digital recently, like the normal, like 30-second TV ad, like the great Microsoft ad at the Super Bowl or the famous Bean Joe Great ad. There are so few of those. And I think in basketball, and I don't want to sound, bitter, because I'm not, but so much of it is a recreation of what happened 20 or 30 years ago. If I had a young player today, like a LeBron, I would never do Nike, Coca-Cola. Been there, done it. That's exactly why Michael didn't go with Converse or Adidas. I wanted something fresh and different for him. I love Roger Federer starting his own shoe company. I hope he's successful. I'm a big Roger Federer fan. He's a great champion on and off the tennis court. And I think there's some great commercials. I really do. But, I sort of think that it needs to be different. I can't off the top of my head say, oh God, this is a great one I've seen today. But there are a lot of great ones.
Okay. Last question for you, David. What are you most excited about in the world of sports these days? What's got you looking to the future?
Well, I really think it's finally, America has entered the worldwide stage with soccer. For years, soccer's been the world sport, and it's been asleep in America. I think there's a great growth in soccer. I think there's a tremendous surge in women's sports, which I think is terrific, particularly women's soccer. I'm really following closely, the activities. My partner is a strategic advisor to the women's soccer union. She's been with me for 20 years, and she played college soccer. She's really into soccer. I think the labor situation in the NBA is disappointing to me. I think that the league and the union need to be partners, and rather than adversaries. They need to be stewards of a worldwide business that David Stern ushered in an age where basketball is played in 220 countries. Think about this for a minute. 220 countries, including China, where more people play basketball every day than there are people who live in the United States. And in India, those two countries probably represent 35% of the world's population. And yet basketball worldwide, the NBA is a smaller business than the NFL, which is played primarily in the United States. I think Stern was the greatest commissioner in the history of sports, and he globalized the game. But there's not enough of a cooperation between the union and the league, where they need to grow the business. Basketball should be, in my opinion, $25 to $30 billion business. If it were, and we took off these ridiculous maxes, then the players like LeBron and Steph Curry, I'm a huge Steph Curry fan, love the way he handles himself. They'd be making $150 million like Messi did last year, instead of making 40. And so I look going forward to, we have a new union leader. I haven't met her yet, and I hope that she takes that challenge of growing the business. I think fans are tired of injunctions and lockouts and strikes. There's some stuff going on in baseball. And I wish there was a way that we could see the picture, the bigger picture. This is entertainment. And people look to sports to get away from injunctions and lockouts and strikes and the stuff they have in their office every day. That's why they love the commercials, because it's the light side of sports, the funny side of sport. It's you see the players without their uniforms sometimes, without their helmets, without their war paint, and you see them as, you know, everyday people. That's why it's so endearing when you hit the right one and it becomes an element of pop culture. So I hope that we could have an area, if I could use the expression, Pax Romana, an era of greater peace in the sports arena, because the growth is phenomenal. Now, the other place it is exploding is in things like esports, gaming, gambling. You know, I'm on college at Syracuse in sports management, the Falk College, and we're the first college in America to award a degree in analytics. We have an amazing analytics program under Professor Rodney Paul. And the director of the program, Michael Veely, we're trying to create new verticals in the areas where we think sports is going to be 5 to 10 years from now. And you start to see it when you see all these nerdy GMs who barely know what shape the basketball is, but they're whiz bangs with the numbers. And that's where I think the business is going. It's going into gaming, esports, gambling, and certainly international. And that's, for me, I'm going to probably be more of a fan watching that than a person, you know, in the arena. But I've lived my dream. I always wanted to be in sports. Could not have had a more enjoyable career. Been around greater clients that I've had, you know, a chance to be around, and those people truly enabled me to be who I am today.
David Falk, a great career and a lot to look forward to as well. Clio Sports 2021 Lifetime Achievement Award winner. Thanks, David, for your time. Congrats. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Likewise, I'm truly honored to receive the award.
Thank you.